Hello, my name is John Davis, and I am the host of a television program on YouTube called In the Radio Shack. Today we're out here in the woods, and I want to talk a little bit about portable shortwave radios. Portable shortwave radio technology has come a great distance in the times that I had my first shortwave portable to now. My first one was a Heathkit Mohican, and it was huge in comparison to one of these receivers. It was very heavy, and the dial readout was more or less meaningless. Today they have a lot of new shortwave receivers that are solid state, and they might have a meaningless dial, but up here at the top, they have a digital frequency readout, so you can read out to the kilohertz, just exactly the station that you want to listen to. A lot of things have changed besides the size of these receivers. I won't go into a lot of stuff there. Just know that they seem to be much more durable and much more sensitive than the things that I used to have in the past. The nicest thing about this is that they are light. You didn't want to take a Heathkit Mohican, or you didn't want to take a Sangean 803A or anything and take it out into the North Woods and camp with it. If you did, they'd eat up batteries. You want to keep those things usually on an AC power. If I had my way today, I would go out and look for a portable shortwave receiver if you are getting into shortwave radio listening. And you can find a reasonably priced used receiver at stores that handle shortwave radio equipment, like ham radio equipment and shortwave listening equipment. The best thing to do is to buy one of these receivers that you think will do you a good job, but buy it used. A used receiver is, depending on who's selling it, it's at a reduced price, and at this reduced price, you can, if you decide you don't want to go along and get deeper into shortwave radio listening, you can trade it off or sell it, and you're not going to be out a whole bunch of money. Another portable shortwave receiver that does excellent job at hearing stations around the world is this PL660 by Texsun. I have recently had it on a vacation, and I heard stations absolutely all over the world with it. And I'll most probably mention a couple of those stations later on in this report. The one receiver that I really am looking forward to getting someday is the Com Radio CR-1A. It's a solid state radio that's very small, but it has capabilities much closer to a Watkins Johnson HF1000A. And it'd be really awesome to have one of these radios with an extended power supply and a telescoping antenna in your backpack or your briefcase where you're traveling around the world. I tried one of them out at Universal Radio a couple times, and I was pretty much amazed by the performance. One of the things you want to do, you ought to be well supplied when you go out to the woods or the boondocks with a portable shortwave radio. If you have a portable shortwave radio out there and the batteries are not charged, or you don't have spare batteries, and it dies, you are just stuck, because there's no way that you're going to do any more listening with that thing. You also most probably would want to have paper and an ink pen to take notes on, or a laptop computer, so you won't forget the stations that you heard. And a lot of the weather here in central Ohio, you need lots of mosquito repellent if you're any place close to a woods. I have two comments about shortwave radio listening with a portable receiver in the house. A lot of times there are places in the house where optimum shortwave radio listening is degraded, and there are other places in the house where it is enhanced. You have to take your receiver with the antenna up and on and walk around the house and find the place where you have the best reception. These things are called sweet spots. Sometimes you have to do it a couple different times during the day. If you start listening in the morning, the sweet spot may not be the same when you go and listen to a shortwave station that evening. So you have to find out which sweet spot is best where. A portable receiver, they do excellent jobs, but don't expect the same performance out of them as a tabletop receiver, and an outside antenna. My best receivers use, which is like a HF1000A Watkins Johnson, or an R390A, or an R391, or Ray Cow, and you use them with a 687-foot horizontal antenna. You are going to have better reception than with any portable. Just be willing to know that you're not going to always have the best reception in comparison. Now I'm done with the outdoor segments because the mosquitoes will be coming out rather quickly, so we are going to go back to the radio room in our house. We're going to talk about portable shortwave radio listening experiences in the household. There are places that have optimum shortwave radio reception and places that don't. You walk around the house with your shortwave radio on and the antenna up, and you look for what they call sweet spots. Sweet spots is where there's maximum signal and the littlest bit of noise. The converse of that is having all noise and no signal. So you want to do this a couple times in a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, to see where it's best to do your shortwave radio listening. Another thing I wanted to cover is the cost of portable shortwave radios. I have seen really good shortwave radios that cost $250 a shot, and some people don't want to pay that. So if you go to a shortwave radio monitoring shop that sells shortwave radio equipment, you talk to them, they will often have used equipment that you can buy at a decent price. The one thing you want to do is make sure that it has a digital frequency readout, so you know what station you're tuning to. And another thing you want, try to get a portable shortwave radio with a built-in UTC clock. One of my favorite times in the program is to give you my listing of shortwave radio stations that's interesting to hear. Without Radio Australia around, I'm starting to listen to CFRB CFRX, which is in Toronto, Canada, and they have their local news of weather, but they also have some interesting news from overseas. You can hear them usually at 60-70 kilohertz, and I listen to them from 1125 UTC to 1132. And I had an idea at 11:30 before starting the news. The next station I heard was Thailand, the British Broadcasting Corporation relay station there on 9,410 kilohertz, and I listened in from 1024 to 1030 with a tentative ID via the internet. It had a very weak signal, even though I was using my Watkins Johnson 1000A receiver and the 687-foot horizontal array. One way to hear China Radio International, if you don't have direct reception from China, that's all that good, and you're here in North America, try tuning to 9570 kilohertz in the morning. That is the China Radio International relay in Albania. I listened in at 0036 to 0043, and I listened to a program that's called Postcard, and it tells about events and happenings around the world that are of interest to shortwave radio listeners and the average person. I heard a report on Nissan's self-driving car. They still have work to do on the program to get it right. Radio Romania International, I listened in on 9730 kilohertz from 0026 to 0031 with an ID of 0030. It had a very strong signal with a SINFO rating of all fives, except for 1.4. I heard another report on the Olympics, and since I'm not interested in the Olympics, I tuned out at a little bit early. I used the 5050A receiver with a 42-foot Wyndham antenna. Another station I'm listening to now is called Hobart Radio International. It is relayed by WYFR in Okeechobee, Florida, and I listened in on 9955 kilohertz, which is one of their standard frequencies, from 347 to 354 with an ID of 353. It had a very strong signal, and I was listening to this thing on my Texan PL660 with his telescoping antenna. On 11,625 kilohertz, I was listening to Vatican Radio from 2004 to 2012 with ID at 2009. It was a very weak signal since they are most probably broadcasting to Africa and not anywhere near to us. I heard word groups and not whole sentences, but they are talking about a new AIDS conference, the first one in 16 years in South Africa. On 11,810 kilohertz, I listened to the BBC from Ascension Island from 1943 to 2001 with several IDs at 2000. There was the most interesting story about a woman that went to Australia with her passport, and she ended up somehow being a modern-day slave for some government agency. I was listening to this on the 1080 receiver and the 687-foot horizontal array antenna. A new one for me is 15,180 kilohertz. It's Nigeria, the Voice of America relay. From 1639 to 1643 is when I tuned in, and I heard an ID at 1642. It had a weak signal, but that was expected since it was most broadcast to South Africa and not North America. I was listening to the In Focus program, and I was using a PL 660 portable receiver and its telescoping antenna when my family and I were at one of the state lodges for a mini vacation. On 15,580 kilohertz, I heard the Voice of America from Botswana, and they ID'd as VOA1. I listened to them from 1906 to 1912 with further information can be found on them over the internet. Radio New Zealand International on 15,720 kilohertz. I tuned in from 109 to 126 with an ID at 126. But that idea I had to use was a research idea via the internet. I heard about a commercial airplane pilot wants to fly his plane to haul cargo. But the bureaucrats were arguing over the safety standards to review the aircraft by. Again, the 5050A and the 687-foot horizontal array antenna. One of the stations that is sort of rare for me to hear is China Radio International over Mali. But it was at 17,630 kilohertz from 1424 to 1431 when I tuned in. I heard about people in China not having the latest methods and standards of helping people with mental illnesses. This is the end of the segment where we talk about shortwave radio broadcasters. The next segment is for foreign language broadcasts and utility stations that I've heard, or clandestine stations I've heard recently. On 65 kilohertz, I heard Kuwait broadcasting a program for Radio Farda, FARDA, from 144 to 150 with a tentative ID via the internet. Since I don't speak Persian, I had to rely on another source to get information for the ID. And I was using my Kato 1103 little portable receiver with my telescoping antenna here at home. Tajikistan is always hard to hear, but I heard it on August 11th I was tuned to 7245 kilohertz, and I heard the Voice of Tajik from 1122 to 1124 with a tentative ID via the internet. I have to go for a tentative ID because I don't speak Hindi very well. Since it was in the middle of a ham band, they were especially hammered by interference or QRM from other stations. 8113 kilohertz, I listened to a radio station in Australia called VMW, which is in the single upper sideband mode, and it transmits weather information from the coastal region where they're at. I heard a male giving latitude and longitudes, but that was all that I could hear. That's all I could copy. Again, I was using the 5050A and the 687-foot horizontal array antenna. On 9420 kilohertz, I heard Greece, Hell, and Icky radiophonia at 421 to 432 with a tentative ID by the internet since I don't speak Greek anymore. But I had a very strong signal. I just wish that they had come out and use. I've heard them recently give a English ID, and I wish they'd start doing that again. Another one of the oddball stations that I've come up with recently was Radio Republica, a signal broadcast by France, and is to the Cuban people by the Cuban Democratic Directorate. I listened in at 158 to 159. And again, I got the ID, a tentative ID by the internet. Radio Taiwan International, I heard on 9680 kilohertz. From 1154 to 1200 with a tentative ID by the internet because it was in Chinese. It had a really good signal, but I downgraded its overall matter, the SINPO rating, a little bit because the noise was fairly consistent that day. One interesting station that I've been commenting on for years in my newsletters is Radio Cairo. The signal has been, over the last year, they have been getting better and better signals into North America. So the last time I heard them, July 19th, they had a really good signal into North America on 9965 kilohertz, and I listened in from 0028 to 0031. The only problem, it was in Arabic. If they could get an English language broadcast in North America with this kind of quality, I'd be listening to it every night. It was awesome. Canada, Gander Radio. This is a station it's a tower station that gives weather to planes coming in from Europe or wherever, and they also give airplane tower weather information throughout Canada. I was listening in on 10,051 kilohertz in a single sideband mode from 1150 to 1152 with an idea tune in. The same receiver, the 5050A, and the 42-foot Wyndham antenna. One of the local broadcasters in China, or networks in China, is called the People's Broadcast System. I guess it's XIN, which I pronounce ZIN Jane. It was in the ULGHUR language, wherever that is for. And I was listening to this on a little PL660 receiver with its telescoping antenna at the state park that we visited a couple weekends ago. One of the barometers that I use to find out how well signals are going to be coming in from Asia in the mornings is like I tune to WWV at 10,000 kilohertz at 15,000. When I hear WWVH coming through WWV, which is in Hawaii, you know that you're going to have a pretty good opening to Asia, so that's a good time to listen in for the more rare stations. On 140 kilohertz, I listen to the Sultanate of Oman, Radio Sultanate of Oman, from 1153 to 1140 with a tentative ID by the internet because I don't speak Arabic at all. I heard one song that was very interesting, and it had a couple people talking with soft background music, so they're most probably trying to pitch something to us. In Romania, I heard Radio Romania International again on 17,800 kilohertz. I had a tentative ID for the internet because it was in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish anymore either, but I heard it from 1924 to 1929 with a fairly good signal. Now, I'd like to thank the management of Aerostream Communications, the Com Radio division, for allowing me to talk to give you some information on their CR-1A receiver when we were out in the woods, and how it could be configured to be a super portable portable radio. Thank you much for them. I appreciate the time, and have a blessed day.